I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Todd Talk, where we take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. The topic for this particular Todd Talk is going to be on creating an environment where it's okay to fail. Now, this kind of goes contrary to what traditional schooling has been, which is that we don't want kids to fail, we want kids to succeed. But unfortunately, what has happened is by doing this is that students only know how to succeed and how to learn from success, and they don't really learn from their failures. I mean, think about the biggest learning moments of your life. More than likely, they stem from failing something, whether it's failing to accomplish something you wanted to accomplish and it gave you more drive, whether it's failing at a relationship and then trying to do better the next time you have a relationship, and so on and so forth. So we are constantly learning from our failures. To give you an idea what this kind of looks like is this is the locus of learning. And so a lot of times what happens is that kids are in this comfortable section, the yellow section, and not much learning takes place here. Kids are not really stretched, they're not being challenged. What they are hearing is easy for them to comprehend, and it's just not really a lot of learning going on in that particular level. So our job as teachers is to push kids into the circle beyond that, which is the risk one. We want kids to take chances. We want them to dream big. We want them to shoot for the stars. But in order to do those things, they have to be in a place where it's okay to fail, where and in a classroom where that's not only okay, but it's encouraged for kids to fail. Because if you have a classroom that doesn't do this, then what happens is you push into the outer ring, which is the danger ring. So if a kid is afraid of failure, they'll shut down, or they'll not take chances, or they will play it very safe. And so we want kids to be in the risk section, which means as a teacher pushing them beyond their comfort level, but also creating an environment where it's safe to do that. So how do we go about creating an environment where it's safe to fail? Well, we make sure this is transparent. This is very visible learning where kids are encouraged to take chances and to fail. For the fail in the new 21st century has become the first attempt in learning, where students it's the first time they're trying something. They're allowed to mess it up, or allowed to not be successful, and allowed to not get it to where they want it to be. And then they're given chances to do that again. And this kind of leads us into the first thing that you could do in your classroom to make sure that students feel it's okay to fail, which is that you have to give them chances to redo things. Call it a mulligan, if you will. But if a student takes a test and fails badly, just taking that grade and putting it in the grade book and moving on is not teaching that child something. So are you giving that child a chance to correct their answers, or a chance to retake the test? And I know the barriers that often come up here, teachers are worried about whether students are, playing the system and not trying their best the first time, and only trying hard because they know they can redo it. But that's all moot. If students do that, then students do that. The point is that students are learning, and there will be students who are learning from their mistakes that they make. So when they take the math test the first time and they miss a particular problem, they've learned from that, and the next time they go to do a similar problem, they're going to know how to be successful. And so this is creating coping mechanisms for students in order for them to have success out of failure. So the second thing that we can be doing in the classroom is encouraging them to go big. So when students are working on something, as the teacher, are you encouraging them to try something beyond their comfort level? So if they're not quite sure, are you putting in supports and giving them the confidence to go ahead and give that a try? Because, as the saying goes, go big or go home. And if you don't go big, then what you're going to get is very safe assignments. You're going to get very safe answers. You're going to get very safe learning, which is not very inspired learning. Safe learning is kind of boring, and it's not really going to prepare kids to go out in the real world where there is a lot of failure that you can learn from. And if you have those mechanisms in order to learn from that failure, then you're going to be really successful in life. So that's the second thing you can do, is to encourage kids to go big. The third thing you can do as a teacher to set up your classroom environment is to show that you make mistakes yourself. Teachers are not perfect. They're not infallible. They, are going to make mistakes. But a lot of times we hide these mistakes from students, or we're embarrassed when we make a mistake. It is perfectly okay to make a mistake as a teacher. And in fact, again, this models for them how it's perfectly okay to do that. I'll give you an example. One time I was doing a project with students, and the project was an utter failure. I did not plan it very well. It was not very well thought out. And as a result, students' products were inferior, and everyone knew it was not a real good project. And so what I did was, the very next class, I had the students sit in a circle in chairs with me in the circle as well. And we talked about what went wrong with the project. And I owned up to some of the mistakes that I made, and students owned up to some of the things that they did. And through this conversation, what we were able to do is we were able to take that project and make it better. And so the next year, when I did that same project with students, it had been changed from our failure and to a very successful project where students were able to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. So those are three things that you should do to set up your classroom. So what does this look like, though? So one thing is to use the engineering design process. So as you can see here, students are asking questions, they're imagining, they're creating, but in here is a chance for them to improve. So when they go to do something the first time, it may not be their best version. It may be their first draft of something. In ELA, we often give kids chances to write multiple drafts of written assignments, but we don't give them, second drafts in math problems or third attempts in science or things of that nature. So it's important that this is front and center in your classroom, that students know that there is an improving aspect to anything that they work on in your classroom, that they have the chance to do that in the space, both mentally and physically, to feel safe to do that. The second thing that you can practically do is you can carve out space for them to practice. So in other words, if they have a presentation coming up, set aside a day where they can practice working on their presentation, where they are going to be, working on that and learning from those, and then partnering them up with other groups so they can, because sometimes you can't see your own mistakes, but others can. And so having an environment where there's open and honest feedback, where students can say, hey, that's not working, you might want to consider changing that, is going to go really far in helping those students learn from those mistakes. And so, but you have to make sure that you're giving them, you don't just say, go home and fix this. You have to give them chances in class to improve or to practice what they're doing so they can make it better. The third thing that you can practically do in your classroom in order for students to learn from mistakes is to challenge them to find your mistakes. Here's the thing that I've noticed in my classrooms in general, is that students are waiting for you to make a mistake and they're quick to point it out. And teachers react in one of two ways. One way is they get offended that the student is correcting them. They may make a snide comment. I've been guilty of that, just as anyone. And we're embarrassed because we made a mistake. The second way you can handle it is to embrace this mistake. As you can see in this particular quote, failure is the most effective way to celebrate and encourage mistakes, and failure is to share your own. So again, you're modeling for students that you're making mistakes. So when I make a mistake, I own up to that and I correct the mistake. Sometimes I make mistakes on purpose. So when I give kids assessments, I'll tell them I've made a grammatical mistake on this test. If you can find it, then you get bonus points. So where I'm purposely making mistakes so that they can see, it's okay to make mistakes. And so that's really important as the teacher, that you put in place things in the classroom where you're showing where you're failing at times. And as a result, they feel that they can fail as well. Because again, the important thing to remember is that we learn best from our failure. And if kids are scared to fail, they're missing a really big opportunity to learn.